Peeps, my lovely History 1 students, how are you doing today? Doing okay? I sure hope so. Today we're going to talk about American imperialism. Ooh, imperialism. Yay! Boo. Anyway, we're going to talk about that. Here's our intro stuff. So what is imperialism? And I've got colonialism here too. I think you hear a lot more in the 21st century. You hear the word imperialism a lot more than colonialism, but they're kissing cousins. So we're going to cover them both here in this first slide. So the fancy definition, I'm just going to read it for you. I know you can read. That's how you got to college. But I'm here to help. That's what I'm here for. Imperialism is the extension of a wealthy or powerful nation's authority by territorial acquisition or by the establishment of economic, political, or cultural dominance over another nation. Ooh. So what that means is imperialism is when a big dog country, say the United States of America, goes to another country, usually a developing nation, a less powerful nation, and says, yeah, we are now the boss of you. That's classic imperialism. That's territorial acquisition. Hey, Hawaii, sucks to be you. We're not going to take over. Hey, Puerto Rico. Hey, much of the Caribbean. Hey, Latin America. Hey, many, many, many Pacific Islands. We're now the boss of you. The other way to do it is to establish economic or political or cultural dominance. So, for example, the ways in which the United States has never colonized Mexico, but we have economic dominance over Mexico, and indeed our economic dominance in Mexico has caused much of the mass poverty which causes immigration, which then conservatives complain about, which is ironic in the nth degree. But that you can be an imperialist by both going to a country and saying, we're now going to take you over, or it can be a lot more subtle. And I think this is a lot more common, which is just, we're going to sell you McDonald's hamburgers and Levi jeans and Christianity, and we're going to tell you that everything you do is inferior compared to our Pop-Tarts and our Protestantism. And I didn't mean to equate those two for those of you who take your religion seriously. But that is the point of imperialism. Okay? Colonialism, then, is imperialism with frosting on it. Colonialism, as it says here, is the addition of the establishment of settlements or the exploiting of resources. So, for example, when Euro-Americans came here to North America in the early 1600s, remember lectures 1 and 2? That's colonialism. Hey, we're going to come to this place that is not ours, and we're going to live here, okay, establishing settlements, and then we're going to take your land, that's exploiting resources. We're going to cut down the trees, exploiting resources. We're going to mine the stuff, exploiting resources. We're going to kill the deer and the bison, exploiting resources. That is, when you go to a place and you not only say we're the boss of you, but actually live there and use that place's stuff for your own. Colonialism, to create a colony. I got a couple of maps here. Don't get overworked up about these. The idea here is I don't need you to see these in detail. They're very small, and if we blow them up, they're a little bit fuzzy. But rather, you get a notion of, I think in America, we imagine in America that we're not imperialists for some bizarre reason. I think because our history books have put a fair bit of energy into telling you that we're not. But you see here in that top map, lots and lots of imperialism in the South Pacific of the United States in one way or another, dominating a variety of Pacific islands. American Samoa, literally called American Samoa, WTF, Hawaii, the Philippines, Guam, the list goes on. And then the lower map is, again, and you see it in the upper map, you see the little arrows down there by the little niblet, which is Florida. That's the Caribbean, and to another extent, Central America and South America. Lots and lots of American imperialism here. The United States has been in and out of a lot of those Caribbean islands. England has been in and out of a number of them, and so has France. We kind of divided the Caribbean up back in the 1800s. Think the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Anyway, good? Cool. Let's go see what's next. Okay, as I alluded to in the first slide when we did our intro stuff, there are different types of imperialism slash colonialism. I'm just going to use the word imperialism, but at least we know. Look at my picture. That's a kind of a pastiche of a classic World War II picture. The classic picture, the guys are raising the flag. Here we have the guys raising the golden arches. It's a sort of a, you don't actually have to take over a place and plant your flag on it. You can just send all of your American bullshit. That was a little harsh. Imperialism makes me cranky, so you're just going to have to ride along with me. Anyway, so types of imperialism. Military imperialism is the easiest to see because wars are always the easiest to see. For example, in 1846, the United States made war on Mexico for almost the direct purpose of taking the northern third of Mexico. And you're thinking, what? Well, yeah, because Texas, uh, New Mexico, Arizona, and California all used to belong, as it were, to Mexico. And keep in mind, belonged to Spain. And keep in mind, before it belonged to Spain, it belonged to the people who live there, right? The indigenous people, famous Mayans and Aztecs, but also lots of other less famous indigenous groups. So first the Spanish imperialized what is now the American Southwest, and then the United States made war on Mexico, won, and then in the treaty said, you will give us that top third of Mexico. I will say, in the United States' favor, the thing they really wanted, they didn't really want Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico until somebody invents air conditioning. Those places suck. And Texas just is always going to suck, period. Much like Florida. Or so says I. But anyway, they really wanted California because they sensed the immense economic benefit of having a place like California. I'm not saying it makes it right, but that's how California becomes a state because of this 1840s war on Mexico. Military imperialism. Economic imperialism. A good example is you had a series of Indian wars in the mid 1800s, both before and after the Civil War. And yes, that's military imperialism, but also one of the ways in which the United States beat, as it were, the Native Americans, on top of all the disease stuff, which don't think that that ended in Lecture 1. That's an ongoing problem for indigenous people. Throughout this 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, and to some extent even still today. Um, One of the things you do is just buy up their land, have them sign treaties that are disadvantageous to them, um, um, convince them that they'd be better off on reservations and take the rest of their land. Sometimes it's not about convincing them, it's about forcing them. None of this stuff is pretty. Economic imperialism. I would argue that what the United States does around the world by using our economic force to get people to do stuff we want them to do is also economic imperialism. And let's say if you use that in the Ukraine to force Russia to quit being assholes to the Ukrainians, that might be a force for good. It's still economic imperialism. It doesn't have to be bad. It is what it is. Cultural imperialism. My example here is the McDonald's and the Starbucks all over the world. And you might think, well, what's the problem? Those people clearly wanted those. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I know in France they desperately do not want American fast food, and they get it anyway because there's so many tourists, many of them Americans. But cultural imperialism is partially about economics, right? Those companies benefit, but also it's about just saying our thing, our crappy fast food hamburger. And let's make no mistake, fast food is disgusting and it's bad for you physically and mentally. You may eat it, but let's not fool ourselves about what it is. Or our overpriced coffee is better than what you were eating or drinking before we got here. And that's often not true. All over the world, there's lots and lots of delightful food and beverages. And one could hardly say that America has perfected food and bev. Or anything else. Cultural imperialism. I would argue that much of the movies in the world are fundamentally that people around the world watch a lot of American movies because we make a lot of movies. Is this our fault? No, it's still cultural imperialism, right? Um, and then religious imperialism. This is this notion, you primarily get this from Christians and then primarily Protestants and Protestants and Catholics are the Christians. Catholics are Christians. Sorry, Protestants, they are. Um, and they're the original Christians. And then Protestants, those are the Johnny-come-latelys. 1,500 years later, the Protestants hop up. Um, is going around the world and saying, yeah, whatever your religion, you people are doing, that's bad. Instead, do this. And then it's not just saying it. Like, for example, the California Catholic missions in the 1700s, they didn't just say, hey, maybe you'd like to try this religion. There's a lot of forced slavery of indigenous people, forced labor of indigenous people, a kind of forced holding people's nose to whatever the religious thing is and saying, you will adapt or you will die. We still have missionaries around the world. I think a lot of missionaries go to places well intentioned and they do good deeds while they're there. So it doesn't have to be bad. But fundamentally, going into a place and saying, your religion is not as good as my religion and you should convert, is imperialism. You may or may not approve of it, not my cop, but it's imperialism. Yeah? Cool. That's enough of those. Let's go see what's next. Okay, my 4 Ps. I thought of this years ago when I first started. My very first job 25 years ago was teaching History 1 at Mount Sac in some little buildings that don't even exist anymore. Man, am I old. And one time that's back when I used to lecture in a room and use chalk on a chalkboard. Man, that was some old school shit. But anyway, one time I was giving that lecture and it occurred to me I could take the reasons for imperialism and make the 4 Ps, and that seemed really clever to me because it would help students remember it. So here you go, the 4 Ps. The number one reason for imperialism, profit. It's the number one reason for anything. Remember slavery? Profit. Oppressing women? Profit. Imperialism? Profit. Number one reason to do things. The map there, that is fundamentally the entirety of the United States of America is a product of imperialism, right? That this country belonged to somebody else, first the indigenous people, and then parts of it to different nations. For example, the Southwest was the indigenous people, then Mexico, then Spain. The middle part of the United States was first the indigenous people, and then France. A little bit of the Pacific Northwest and Alaska was the indigenous people, then Russia. Imperialism. The second P, politics. That is, Americans, and I'm not saying all Americans, but a lot of Americans really like that sort of the argument, vote for me, and I will defeat X group and make America more stronger, greater, better. It's a kind of sort of pick my football team and we will defeat the enemy and dance on the bones of their families. That's not what football is. My goodness, what football am I watching? Anyway, politics. Americans love a president that says, vote for me and I will kick the rear end of these people. It's James Polk. He literally ran on the platform. This is in 1846. That if elect me and I will make war on Mexico and we will score California, and that'll be cool. And he won the election, and that's exactly what he did. Teddy Roosevelt, a very colorful figure and president in America, but was always like, elect me and I will kick various and sundry butts. He was particularly involved in the Spanish-American War in the Philippines and Cuba, and then of course sweet George Bush Jr., hapless, dim-witted fellow with some really evil cronies, who was like, pick me and we will, in spite of the fact that Iraq and Afghanistan did not attack us at 9/11, we will nonetheless attack them in retribution for 9/11 and go team, which is just profoundly stupid. But anyway, so first 2 Ps. Profit, number 1. Politics, also popular. And you can blame the president, but you should also, presidents are always, this is true of all of them, including the recent orange rapist, they are never the disease. They are a symptom of the disease. These people would not have power if voters, if Americans, if citizens didn't say, yeah, give me some of that. Yeah? Okay. More P's. Okay. Politics, profit, patriotism. There's this notion that is America's patriotic duty, and this is all tied up in economics and politics and in piety, the fourth one. This sort of notion that it is our American duty to spread American values across the world, or sometimes less malevolently to go around the world and help and protect people. And sometimes we really are. I mean, the problem with being the world's greatest superpower, and we are, make no mistake, is that when countries we're allied with get in trouble, we're supposed to go help. We're supposed to help the Ukraine. We're supposed to help Poland and France and England during World War II. We're supposed to show up and help. It is our patriotic duty to stand up not for ourselves but for our friends, for our allies. But also a lot of this is tied up in flag waving, America rocks stuff. And I think that stuff can be super dangerous because it allows people to behave badly sometimes. I'm not saying patriotism is bad, but I think there's a false patriotism where people wave the flag or they drive around their big white pickups and their MAGA stickers and their Blue Lives Matter stickers with their flags trailing off the back of the thing, but they don't actually care about democracy. And they just want more power for white people. It's white supremacy. It's the tiki torch and the Ku Klux Klan outfit disguised as a flag. That kind of patriotism is problematic, if you're me. And then piety, the last one. And here again, I don't mean to badmouth missionaries or the American missionary impulse, but oftentimes a notion that we should make war on these people because they are heathens, because they are not Christians. The Indians, not Christians, make war on them. In the Middle East, those damn Muslims, all they need is to be converted to Christianity. We'll go in there, we'll beat them, go team, go America, we'll make some money, and then we'll convert them to Christianity. Piety, sort of a notion, and this is tied up with patriotism too, a sort of notion that the American religions, primarily Protestantism and to a lesser extent Catholicism, and I'm not saying those are the only two religions, but those are the two tied up in this stuff. American Muslims, American Hindus, American pagans don't spend a lot of time on imperialism. It's Christianity, and it is sort of built into the Christian impulse that you're supposed to go out there and spread the word, right? Which is, if you take those ideas seriously, important to you, but it also functions as imperialism. And that is what it is. Sometimes with good intents, sometimes with poor intents. Yeah? All right, good for that slide. Let's see what's next. Okay, we're right on. So here's what we've done. We've defined imperialism and colonialism. We've talked about the different kinds of imperialism. And then we've talked about why we have imperialism. Wow, we are good. Look at all the things we are learning. Now, here's the other key thing we need to know about imperialism is this notion called sphere of influence. So the definition, and I'm not crazy about this definition, but I didn't want something that was 37,000 words long. But the definition is a country or area in which another country has power to affect cultural or economic development. Okay, I don't know. I got a PhD, and I don't know. Here's how I think of sphere of influence. Sphere of influence is that the developed nations, first world nations, whatever you want to call them, we say developed now, but primarily United States, England, and to a lesser extent Germany, France, etc. They had, in the 1900s, they divided up the world and said, this is your sphere of influence. Like, for example, Europe divided up Africa. Europe, France, Germany, England, the Dutch, who else was in there? A little bit of Spain, divided up Africa without asking the Africans. The United States was not in Africa at all in the 1900s because it wasn't our sphere of influence. It wasn't our area where we were allowed to act. I got a map here of China. You can see China divided up without, again, asking the permission of the Chinese between the Japanese, the Russians, the British, the Germans, the French, um, and then if you connect what we have here is not just China, obviously, because you've got India in there, Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam. See French Indochina, that's Vietnam. Oh fuck, yay! But there's the Philippines too. That's the United States. So there is some American influence there. But this sort of notion that that some places were for England to imperialize, and some places were France to imperialize, and some places for the United States to imperialize. Our sphere of influence in the United States, I think I got that on the next slide, so let me not bolt. Um, so, oh, here's this thing. We're often told in history books that the United States, we didn't go into World War I, or we went late, or we went reluctantly into World War II because we are an isolationist nation. We don't go around the world picking fights. We don't go around the world bullying people. We are isolationists and pacifists. Well, that is, I'm just going to say it, that is bullshit. It is not true at all. We didn't go into World War I right away or World War II because they were fighting over places that were not our sphere of influence. They were fighting over Eastern Europe. They were fighting over North Africa, and we didn't. Those were not our spheres of influence, so they were not our business, right? So what was our business, or what did we think was our business? Now, in the 21st century, then the United States thinks the whole world is its business, for good and for ill. Seriously, for good and for ill. Let's go see the United States sphere of influence. Okay, I have this map, and there's another map on the next slide. But you see here, United States imperialism, and this isn't a map it isn't a map that says sphere of influence on it, but you can see it. So what you can see is our sphere of influence, we thought, was North America, and indeed there was in the 1900s a notion that we could eventually take all of Canada and all of Mexico and essentially nail down the entirety of the North America. It turns out we couldn't pull it off, so we end up with that middle swath of North America. And then, of course, the Caribbean. See the flags down there? And then Pacific Islands. United States sphere of influence. Hawaii, Midway, the Philippines, Guam, etc., etc. Oh, there's American Samoa. Yeah? Okay. So it begins to give you a sense. And I think the next map, we're going to look more closely at the Caribbean. Yeah. All right, let's go. Oh, answer. A couple of slides back, I said, what was our sphere of influence? And the answer, which I really did answer on the last slide, is the Pacific Islands. We saw that. And Latin America. And here's a map of Latin America up a lot closer. So what we have here is Central America and the Caribbean, and some dates and times in which the United States was in and out of these places. The United States has been in and out of Cuba, like, I think this map here shows 1, 2, 3, 4 times, but I think it's more than that because we also have to count the 1960s, etc., etc. Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, which is now a U.S. territory. You're going to learn more about that in your discussion group, etc., etc. In and out of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Nicaragua, Panama. In and out of Panama for an almost too obvious reason that there's this tiny little isthmus, that little narrow neck there in Central America. And if you could just put a great big canal through there, ships wouldn't have to go down around South America, around toward the bottom. And apparently the weather's quite bad down there because you're practically at Antarctica and then back up and around to get over to California and the rest of the West Coast. So we're very interested in Panama to build that canal. And again, that's economic. If we can sail ships through the Panama Canal, that's going to save a lot of money, and it's going to make some people a lot of money. Anyway, so again, the American sphere of influence. We don't talk about this stuff a lot. We like to pretend we weren't in and out of these places, that we don't continue to be in and out of those places. This is the 1900s map. If we put up a 20th century map, we'd say we're still messing around in Central America, and very, very much to the detriment of the people that live there, which is why so many of them immigrate here, because we make a mess. and then we leave people with it. Yeah. Let's see what's next, shall we? Okay, this is not American history because this is Africa, and we had historically very little to do with Africa. But again, it gives you an. I said this that Africa wasn't the United States' sphere of influence, and so European nations, and you see them at the top of the map there. Little tiny Europe says we're going to divide up Africa, and they did this in the early 1900s. And so you see the British, that's England, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Belgium all in France. That green spot in the middle, that sort of lower middle, that's Belgian Congo. The Belgians were. You think the Belgians that they sound like nice people. They eat French fries with mayonnaise. Um, they live next to France. Their food is delightful. The Belgian king, King Leopold, um, the things he did in the Belgian Congo, not he, the things his nation did, the atrocities. Oh my God. I'm not saying that the other Europeans in parts of Africa didn't behave badly too, but the Belgian Congo is kind of famous for the way the Belgians acted there. Anyway, also you can see parts of the Middle East divided up too, um, particularly the British. Yeah, right? So, sphere of influence. Some places get imperialized, some places are imperialists. Okay, here's the thing. What I've done with this lecture is I've given you a whole bunch of sort of superstructure. What is imperialism? What causes it? Why do we do it? Uh, where did we do it? Where did we not do it? That's what we've done. It's all very specific, not very thrilling. Here's another map of various and sundry imperialist influences, and you'd have a color-coded thing. Don't worry. We just wanted, I like a map, you can tell. Um, what you're going to do is we're going to cover the specifics. You're going to cover the specifics in both your video assignment and your discussion assignment. Your video assignment is going to be about Hawaii, and your discussion assignment is going to be about Puerto Rico and Hawaii. So you're going to learn the specifics outside of this lecture in those places. So the lecture doesn't go on and on and on, and also so the video and discussion assignments aren't redundant. Okay? So let's see about Hawaii in the next thing that you do. Until then, let's get this lecture wound up, shall we? Okay. Okay, I just said this. I've been using this little kitty video, this cat Pinky, who looks almost like Hello Kitty Kitty. She's going to tell you about Hawaiian imperialism. I love this video. I've been using it for a really long time. It is elderly at this juncture. It still works. It's still accurate. It still exists on the internet, so go us. You'll find it in your video assignment. But you probably never asked yourself, why? Why is Hawaii a state? And you may not even know anything about Puerto Rico, but Puerto Rico is an American territory. Uh, uh, they belong to the United States, but they don't get to vote. They don't have representatives in Congress, but they're also not taxed. And some of them like that, and some of them don't like that. But you so if you knew about Puerto Rico, you probably never asked yourself why do we have control of Puerto Rico? I'd be willing to bet you've never asked yourself why is a Pacific island way out there a state? You just assumed, well, that's the way it is. So Pinky's gonna tell you about Hawaii, and Pinky, while looking harmless, Pinky is pissed. She's not happy. She's gonna be quietly furious about the whole thing, which I just think it's delightful. Anyway, so endeth. I do not have a so endeth card because I have Pinky instead. So endeth your 7th lecture on imperialism. That wasn't too bad, right? We learned some stuff, and we got some more stuff to learn in this class. If you're asking yourself, why does this matter? And I don't know why you would ask yourself that, but let's say you were. Imperialism is an ongoing problem around the United States. The United States is still engaging in imperialism. This sort of notion about imperialism and colonialism comes up in popular culture a lot. I think your generation, that is the young people, Gen Zs, or maybe we have a new name for it, I don't keep up, um, are really good at understanding the nuances of male privilege, patriarchy, racism, homophobia, transphobia, and imperialism, uh, fat shaming, all that stuff. You guys are really great at that stuff. So I think this is one of the lectures I include in this class because I think it's helpful to have a more educationally rooted understanding of colonialism and imperialism when we're throwing around those words on Insta or TikTok or just in our conversations with our friends where we're outraged about something, right? And nothing wrong with any of those things, but it's helpful to know more because the more you know, the more powerful you are, right? So now, look, there you go. Did you notice I'm hoarse again today? I don't know why. I should probably record these later in the day, but I do them first thing in the morning in my bed, wearing my jammies and looking out the window. Today it's June gloom and it's all gray and cool, and I live up in the mountains. It's really pretty. I wish you were here. Not in bed with me, because that would be inappropriate, but just in the mountains in the cool air. It's really nice. Okay, you guys, really nice. Go you. You've made it this far. See you later. Missing you already.